the Redman on the funk thing. Psych your motherfucking rights tonight.
What the fuck is going on? Ain't you supposed to be dead?
That's right. Redman, the craziest rapper of the 90s. Rap Artist of the Year Grammy nominee with a resume so long, you'd run out of breath just reading it. Tonight's the Night and Can't Wait are two classics, and if you haven't heard them yet, sorry, you're only playing hip-hop in demo mode. Redman, a heavyweight name, who if he weren't a rapper, could easily have become as famous as Eddie Murphy in the American comedy scene. But wait, don't let the trolls mislead you. Throughout his 35-year career, Redman has not only experienced the spotlight and platinum records, he's been behind bars, survived a robbery, and been immersed in love dramas louder than his own beats. Yet no media outlet dares to mention it. Why is that? Has there been any underground transactions? Why are all the leads so tightly sealed? You think you understand Redman? Think again. There are still many interesting things about this hip-hop icon that you don't know. Get your popcorn and drinks ready, preferably carbonated, because this story is going to be more intense than any Hollywood movie ever made. 1. Childhood hesitating in the industry. Brick City, a Roman copy in the heart of America, where the only law is survival. And here, you don't fight with strength. You fight people. If Last Comic Standing landed in Brick City, they'd retreat immediately. Because here, everyone knows how to clown around to survive. Elsewhere, laughter is joy. In Brick City, it's a distress signal. That city has never recovered from the race riots of the 1960s. Drugs, guns, poverty, and despair permeate like breath. Amidst that scene, a skinny, brown-skinned boy with a crooked smile, Reginald Noble, later known as Redman, was learning to survive in his own way. His father, Eddie Noble, a Marine who served 2 tours in Vietnam, returned with an iron will and wordless nightmares. His mother, a civil rights worker, spent half her life mending the lives of those abandoned by society. But discipline and love at home couldn't drown out the sounds of ambulance sirens, gunshots, and screams in the streets. The distorted soundtrack of Redman's childhood. He once said, "Brick City in the 80s was pretty wild. Every time you stepped out the door, you had to fight. For no reason at all, just because I lived there. In Newark, a punch isn't an action. It's a means of transportation. People don't travel by car. They travel by instinct. If you want to go to school, you have to be beaten. If you want to go home, you have to fight. The streets are the map. Violence is the ticket through the station. Police. Excuse me, do you want to call them? Just call, they'll come. But only after the person is gone, after blood has been shed. They can't stop crime. They only know how to record the tragedy. With kids like Redman, the police aren't saviors. They're spectators arriving after the final curtain. Redman understood early on that if he waited for someone to save him, he wouldn't live long enough to be saved. The unchangeable principle in Brick City live with indifference. It's not your business, so don't be foolish enough to interfere. Here, kindness doesn't save anyone. It just makes you the next target. But for a little kid like Redman, a punch wasn't an option. He learned differently, not like the old-timers in the neighborhood, who knew how to survive with a smile. Redman jokes around, pretends to be stupid, and laughs like a clown all day long. He laughed so hard his jaw hurt, he laughed so much people thought he was crazy. And it was that madness that saved him. The addicts and thugs, people who show no mercy, surprisingly felt sorry for this silly boy. "Poor thing, the boy's gone crazy," they said. And just like that, he saved his life. In Brick City, you don't need to go to the battlefield. War comes to you every morning. People grow up elsewhere, but here they only survive long enough to get old. The whole neighborhood was like a fever. Kids like Redman are just small cells in that fever. He said, "People think New Jersey is famous for carjacking. No, that's just the visible part. The reality is much worse. Murders and insane stupidity happen every day." It sounds like a joke at first, but within it lies the exhaustion of a child who has become too familiar with corpses on the streets and the sound of gunfire at the end of the alley. Brick City is a world nestled within the heart of America, where opportunity and death stand side by side. There you don't just need luck to survive, but you need to be tough enough not to lose your humanity. And the scariest thing isn't violence, it's when people start to see it as normal. That boy often sits at the dining table tapping his fingers and muttering a few rhymes. Perhaps at that time he didn't know it was rap. He was just creating a different rhythm stronger than the gunshots outside. A private rhythm of life to avoid going crazy amidst the violence. Redman's childhood was a cruel test. Either collapse or learn to laugh to survive. How can humans survive in a world where fear has become the common language? Brick City doesn't need demons, because humans are doing that job just fine. And if we were Redman, would we dare to continue living among soulless corpses? Sometimes to avoid going crazy, people have to pretend to be crazy. And Redman did it better than anyone else. But then, as he once admitted, those streets still found me. And this time I opened the door for them too early. 2. When life is reduced to mere reflexes. Before the world revered him, Redman made the streets of Newark tremble. Not because of his punchlines, but because of the white lines he carried. Redman's academic life had no significant highlights. Despite trying his best to get into college, he was expelled from Montclair State for having poor grades. A piece of paper with a notice of expulsion, a few lines of emotionless writing, and that's it. No one asked why a child from Brick City couldn't survive in the lecture hall. In a place where education is a privilege, failure needs no reason. Just a single spelling mistake is enough to close off an entire future. With incomplete knowledge, he chose the fastest path to survival drugs. You don't harmonize, you dissolve. Dissolve into the slippery rhythm of Brick City where someone falls every night without anyone bothering to count. He dissolved into the smell of smoke, the smell of money, and the half-awake, half-drunken laughter after each successful deal. I'm really selling. When I sell cocaine, I go big. Redman once admitted. Without a hint of boasting, it was just like recounting a period where he still didn't understand what he had sacrificed. He sold coke weed things that made people forget reality, and also made him forget who he once was. What's even more terrifying is that you're not alone in that choice. His brother was in prison for over 10 years. The whole group of close friends, some for 12 years, others for 15. Brick City doesn't need war because it is already a battlefield. The children who grew up with Redman one by one disappeared. No one died of old age only because they chose the wrong street corner to stand on. Why would a child who knows full well about violent killings still rush into it? The answer isn't in ignorance, it's in despair. Redman didn't choose the wrong path. He just chose the only path that was still open. In Brick City, when you're born amidst the ruins, opportunity isn't something to find. It's something you have to seize. And sometimes the price of survival is sacrificing yourself. He didn't need anyone to teach him how to fall. The whole neighborhood was a kindergarten class in sin. Every child knows how to trade before they know how to do their homework. Their knowledge can't save anyone. It only makes you die slower. Redman once tried to escape, once believed that education could change his destiny. But when he was kicked out, he realized a cruel truth. Not everyone is born to choose their own stage. Some people can only perform on the sidewalk. The world has pushed you aside. And on the roadside, morality has no value anymore. Redman sinks deeper, dissolving into the layer of mud that society still pretends not to see. He became the perfect product of Brick City, dangerous, raw, and pitiable. And perhaps even you yourself don't realize it. You're slowly becoming the kind of person you once feared and hated. The people he used to avoid on the street now reflect in his own eyes every morning. Every glance, every reflex, every startle at the sound of the siren, he had become them. Redman is no longer running from the devil. He has become a part of it. But in that very distortion, he learned something no school could teach. Violence doesn't just kill people, it also teaches them how to live. He learned how to observe, how to avoid, and how to pity those like him. Children who only committed crimes because no one gave them a chance to be kind. And it was in that darkness that Redman was forged. The system wanted to crush him, but unintentionally forged a layer of steel around his soul. Those years considered failures forged a resilience, cunning, and survival instinct, qualities that later became the soul of his music. Then one day, everything fell apart when his mother discovered the bag of goods hidden under his hat. No screaming, no tears. She only packed a few things, opened the door, and said a sentence Redman would remember for the rest of his life. "This house doesn't accommodate addicts." The door closed, and at the same time, Redman's youth also came to an end. To outsiders, it's abandonment. But for Redman, that was the verdict that saved his life. In Brick City, being kicked out of your home still meant a chance to live. Being locked up in jail did not. Not long after, during a robbery, he was beaten and broke his bones lying under a car, clearly hearing his blood mixing with the rainwater. At that moment, he understood something he would never forget. The streets have no friends, only people who haven't betrayed you yet. All his friends were swallowed by the system, leaving him as the only one who hadn't been digested. Not because of luck, but because my mother's slammed door unintentionally opened another escape route. Mother's closing the door, that was the fateful opening for me. 3. Music, the path to salvation. A song pulled him out of the abyss. It's not a hymn, nor is it a confession. That's Strictly Business by EPMD. The track blasting from an old cassette player echoing through the damp room and somehow saved a guy who used to deal drugs and lie under cars to survive. Redman recounted, "I heard Strictly Business and told my sister, I can do that." It sounds simple, but for someone who was just kicked out of their home by their mother and narrowly escaped a gang, that phrase wasn't ambition. It was a vow of survival. Hip-hop is not just music. In Brick City, it's the religion of those who no longer believe in anyone. And Redman at that time was a believer who had just found his first faith. He began wandering through parks in Newark and New Jersey, not for recreation, but to survive. Each freestyle is a battle, each punchline is a blowback at life. He calls himself DJ Cut Killa. No studio, no audience, just the rhythm of his heartbeat and the echoes from the crumbling buildings. That was the period when Redman transformed survival energy into sound, turning every scar into lyrics, every fear into flow. Amidst those impromptu freestyle sessions, fate entered his life, in the form of a man named Eric Sermon, half of the group EPMD. Sermon saw a thin young man speaking faster than he could breathe, with eyes that were both wild and bright. Instead of throwing it away, he invited Redman to live with him on Long Island. "I didn't just see talent," Sermon once said, "I saw a person who was dying without purpose." In Long Island, Redman first learned what discipline was. He had to wake up early, clean the studio, learn how to cut beats, keep time, and redo each verse until Sermon nodded. From a man living by instinct, Redman learned to turn instinct into art. Long nights, sleeping on the sofa stomach, rumbling with hunger, but eyes shining brightly. He once said, "I didn't know who I was until I stepped into the recording studio. From that moment on, I knew I was born to do this." In Brick City, he sells goods to make a living. In Long Island, he sold words to be reborn. His hunger was still there, only this time it wasn't for cocaine, but for the microphone. Once you've tasted the streets, you understand that every opportunity is a battle. Redman brought that same thirst into his music, and it set him apart. He doesn't rap about glitz, doesn't flaunt gold, doesn't try to be cool. He tells his story bare, without any need for a glossy veneer. And the audience felt that. They saw in Redman not a rapper, but a real person, surviving with every word. Music became the place where he shed all the remnants of the past. He raps to forget the smell of blood on the streets, to erase the sound of his mother crying from his memory, and to prove that he doesn't have to die like most of his friends. In the studio, Redman is no longer the one abandoned by the system. He is the one controlling his own sound. Each beat is a new brick on the path he's building for himself. Looking back those nights sleeping on the sofa, those days eating instant noodles in the studio were the happiest days of my life. For the first time, Redman was allowed to dream. He once said, "I don't need anyone to save me. Music has done that." EPMD didn't just get him off the streets, they got him out of himself. From crack-filled streets, Redman entered the studio. With the same hunger, just a different way to escape. He's still fighting, but this time his weapon is the mic. And when he picked up the mic, hip-hop had never heard anything like it. 4. The period of fame. The clown in the crown. He turns chaos into music, and music into a crown. After years of surviving the chaos of Brick City, Redman took the stage with an energy that no one could understand. He didn't appear as a hero, not as a victim, but as a survivor who had just crawled out of the rubble, picked up a microphone, and began to tell his life story with laughter. In 1992, the album What the Album was born. Crazy, raw, funny, and nakedly honest. No one has ever heard a rapper dare to turn their tragedy into such outrageous jokes. He raps about drugs, about failure, about a childhood scarred as if it were all just a joke. But beneath every beat are wounds that haven't healed. The entire hip-hop world needs to pay attention. Those who grew up with Redman recognized themselves in his rap lyrics, dirty, chaotic, honest, and pitiful. Others just saw a madman. What the Album quickly went platinum. Redman became the beloved clown of hip-hop. The fans laughed because he made them forget reality. And Redman laughed because if he didn't, he would cry. But while audiences saw him as an entertainment phenomenon, he saw himself as living proof that pain could be remixed into something more beautiful. Many critics at the time considered Redman to be just comic relief, a showman not deep enough to be ranked alongside the giants. But they forget that with Redman, humor isn't a style, it's a survival mechanism. You once said, "I laugh because if I don't laugh, I'll cry." Behind every laugh, every arrogant freestyle is a soul that is always afraid of returning to the darkness of the past. Redman doesn't perform, he exists. When he stepped onto the stage, he was like a storm throwing himself into it, screaming, laughing loudly, dancing wildly, smashing the mic, and then bowing to thank the audience like a clown who had just finished his final act. But what few people know is that after the lights went out, he returned backstage with deep-set eyes gasping for breath and eerily silent. The madness on stage is the perfect cover for the gaps left by Brick City. One audience member once said, "When Redman walked out, you couldn't take your eyes off him. He made the whole crowd explode, but sometimes in the spotlight I saw him as if he were trying to escape himself." Perhaps only those who have wrestled with darkness can recognize that the light in Redman's laughter is not warm at all. It is burning hoarse and as fragile as a street lamp in the middle of a thunderstorm. Every Redman tour is an escape. He carries laughter on his shoulders like a kind of pain reliever. The crowd thought he was happy, but in reality, that was how he healed himself. "My laughter isn't rebellious, it's therapeutic." Redman once said that, and he lived up to that. In every rap, every line of dialogue, every dirty joke, Redman always maintains a very unique rhythm. The rhythm of someone who has seen death but still chooses to dance with it. He turns the stage into a place to test courage. As the audience cheered, he didn't hear the applause. He heard the sound of his heartbeat matching the bass. A Redman on stage is a crowned clown, but inside he's still the kid from Brick City laughing to hide his fear, talking to avoid crying and rapping, to avoid drowning in memories. Fame came too quickly, but misunderstanding came even faster. The more people laugh with Redman, the fewer who truly understand what he's laughing about. They only see a crazy rapper, someone who brings joy. But no one saw that the man was using laughter to keep his mind from breaking. He once said, "I didn't play the funny guy because I wanted to be funny. I just don't want people to see me breaking down inside." Perhaps that's why Redman has always been a paradox. The louder he laughs, the deeper he is sad. The more he was loved, the lonelier he felt. Looking back at this period, we realize that Redman was not simply a joking rapper. You are the one who turns chaos into music, who turns laughter into a survival mechanism. And no matter how big the platinum discs, the stage lights, or the fame, they weren't bright enough to illuminate the darkness within him. Because for Redman, laughter was never a joke. It was a prayer. 5. Dare is from the dark side. The album I Want to Forget. The masterpiece almost killed its own author. In 1994, when Redman released Dare is a Dark Side, no one, including himself, realized that it was not just an album, but a farewell recorded in sound. A masterpiece born from the abyss, where fame and depression collide, where laughter was once armor, but is now just an empty shell. What if the album is the rebellious cry of youth, then Dare is a Dark Side is the echo from a soul that has begun to decay. The album cover shows Redman half buried in the ground, with only his face visible against a backdrop of red earth, a haunting image inspired by Funkadelic's Maggot Brain. But unlike a tribute, this is a desperate copy. He's not pretending to bury himself for shock value. He's truly burying a part of himself. It was a visual confession. I am dying slowly, and this is the only way to say it without anyone laughing. Throughout the recording process, Redman was deeply immersed in PCP, a drug that causes people to get lost between hallucinations and reality. He told me himself, "I used a lot of dust. I'm lost. I completely disappeared." In the dimly lit rooms, the sound echoed like a reverberation in the mind of someone falling freely. No joy, no laughter, just heavy distorted beats reflecting the chaos in his mind. For audiences, There Is a Dark Side is a work that is ahead of its time, dark, chaotic, and creatively limitless. But for Redman, it was a diary of self-destruction. Each song is like a piece of addiction. Each rap verse is a dialogue between him and the devil within himself. You once said, "When I was making that album, I didn't remember anything. I just knew I wasn't okay, and I used music to prove that I was still alive." Ironically, that very album propelled him to the pinnacle of artistic achievement. Fans worship it, and critics hail it as a dark masterpiece, one of the boldest and most psychological hip-hop albums of the 1990s. But that acclaim was like a cruel joke. The world called it the pinnacle, while you called it hell. Redman avoided mentioning There Is a Dark Side for 2 decades. He refused to perform any songs from this album not out of arrogance, but because every note was an old knife wound, reopening wounds that had never healed. It wasn't until 2021, during a Versus battle with Method Man, that he performed Can't Wait again. It wasn't a nostalgic moment, but a way to say goodbye. Redman once said that when he listened back to There Is a Dark Side, he didn't hear music, he heard disorientation, the sound of my laughter in desperation, and the souls that had disappeared around me. He said, "I buried myself in that album. I don't want anyone digging me up again." The words sounded light, but were as heavy as a confession. In the world of hip-hop, where pain is often contained within the beat, Redman let it spill out, raw, unfiltered. That's also what makes There Is a Dark Side special. It's not an album to listen to for fun, but to feel. When Redman yelled, you heard the collapse. When he's silent, you hear the emptiness that fame can't fill. Millions love this album for its authenticity. But that very authenticity burdened Redman with an additional 20 years of silence. In the throes of addiction and loneliness, Redman once described that feeling as a soul trapped between 2 floors, not sinful enough to go to hell, not pure enough to be forgiven. There, every song he wrote wasn't to make money, but to stay alive. Because if he didn't make music, he would go crazy. The fan saw a genius, while he saw a zombie. And that is the paradox of There Is a Dark Side, an album that is both a creative peak and the depths of the soul, a work that the world praises, but its creator wants to bury forever. There are songs that elevate people to the pinnacle of glory, and there are also songs that bury them under the soil they themselves have built up. With Redman, There Is a Dark Side is both. It made him immortal in music and nearly killed his real self. But like all of Redman's stories, even in hell, there's still a glimmer of light. From those very ashes, another Redman is being born, one who has seen the dark side of fame and learned how to survive after falling from his own spotlight. 6. Awakening. Muddy Waters. A rebirth. After years of being immersed in smoke, drugs, and violence, Redman once said he had reached the bottom of his own soul. But the strange thing is sometimes people have to hit rock bottom before they realize what they're standing on. For Redman, that turning point wasn't a fall, but the beginning of a rebirth. Quiet without fanfare. Just the moment he opened his eyes after a long night and realized, I don't want to disappear like them. In 1996, Redman released Muddy Waters, his third album and a pivotal moment in his life. Before it was chaos, after it was awakening. If There Is a Dark Side is the diary of a lost soul, then Muddy Waters is the confession of a man who has awakened. He woke up from addiction, woke up from illusion, woke up from the very image of madness he had once used to hide his fear. Previously, Redman had said he could no longer control himself. In the early 90s, he took the stage with eyes blazing red, a smile wider than the stage lights, and an energy so fiery that people thought he was living every rapper's dream. But behind that facade are white nights' highs that last until sleeplessness, and mornings waking up, not remembering what you said. I'm not myself anymore. he once admitted. And as his fame reached its peak, Redman fell into the depths of his own self. Then he stopped, decisively. No declarations, no drama. He just disappeared from parties, left the friends who were dragging him down, and went back to his tiny studio in Staten Island. He quit Angel Dust, gradually reduced his cannabis use, and chose to isolate himself in music. No more nights of screaming, no more wild laughter. Only the beat horse grating and his rap voice growling like a confession. Muddy Waters was born in that context, an album not meant to be sold, but to breathe. He sat for hours in the recording studio, an old room with peeling walls, tangled wires, yellowed light, and the smell of cigarettes mixed with sweat. There, he no longer ran from the past, no longer denied his mistakes, but learned to talk to them. "I don't want to do it again," he said. "I just want to do it right." The Muddy Waters album is not just music, it's self-examination. The melodies are unpolished, the beats are raw, the flow is guttural, even thorny. But in every line one can hear contemplation. There's the Redman of the streets, the Redman of the shadows, but also the Redman of understanding and gratitude. He no longer tries to make others laugh, he silences them. Perhaps the moment that best reflects Redman's transformation isn't on the album, but rather on the MTV Cribs program, where he became a legend simply by having a rundown house. While his contemporaries were flaunting lavish mansions and shiny supercars, Redman appeared in his small, cluttered Staten Island home. On the floor were electrical wires, a few old posters, a worn-out mattress propped in the corner of the room, a non-functional doorbell, and a nearly empty refrigerator. Viewers thought it was a joke, but it was the truth. The whole of America burst into laughter, and Redman laughed too. But his smile was no longer evasive. It was the smile of a man who was finally calm enough to show the world who he truly was. "I don't need a big house. I need freedom," he said. That house became a symbol of Redman's spirit, rustic, honest, and unadorned. While the entire hip-hop world was racing to show off, Redman chose to show off his simplicity. And that's what makes him different. He doesn't try to be the standard rapper, because for him, standards are what kill individuality. He doesn't wear luxury to prove his worth, but uses honesty to demonstrate strength. I used to think I had to pretend to be strong to survive, but it turned out that just being honest was enough. After Muddy Waters, Redman was no longer a symbol of rebellion, he became a symbol of authenticity. He lived the way he rapped, gritty, honest, unpretentious, but never fake. No more flashing lights, no more illusions. For the first time in many years, he was living exactly as he wanted. He is not ashamed of his humble beginnings, nor is he afraid of others seeing his imperfections. Because I understand that sometimes it's imperfection itself that moves people the most. Muddy Waters is therefore not just an album, it's a cultural milestone. It wasn't polished by the record label, there was no massive media campaign yet. It lingered in listeners' hearts like a reminder. Live authentically because nothing is more real than your own pain. Redman went through half his life to understand that fame is not a reward, but a challenge. And after overcoming it, he found what money, fame, or power couldn't buy: inner peace. From a guy who used laughter to hide his pain, Redman now uses simplicity itself to inspire. He no longer had to play Redman. He just needed to be Reginald Noble, the man who had been through hell and was grateful to still be alive to tell the story. And then amidst the diamond-clad rappers, Redman chose to wear the truth. His message is simple, yet profound. I don't need to pretend to be luxurious, because honesty is already glory. In a world where everyone tries to paint themselves to stand out, Redman stands out by not painting himself at all. And once he stood firm in the truth, he began to fight for something greater: justice. For Redman, freedom isn't just about living authentically, but also about helping people like him. The children who were once forgotten in Brick City have the same opportunity to live authentically.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore. stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.